So, in the past, I ranked all the games I've ever played, but nobody watched that. So today, I will go into more detail on the Zelda-specific ratings, as I tend to talk about Zelda a lot on my channel. I should also note that I'm just ranking the games that I have played. Each game will be ranked in 5 different categories: story, characters, dungeons, items, and overall vibes, whatever that means. As I always say in these types of videos, I love Zelda, and this is just my opinion. This is a completely subjective list. If I were to rank them more objectively, then the list would be very different. You're free to have your own opinions, yada yada yada. Discuss your opinions in the comments. Alright, now let's get into it. Starting with my least favorite, number 11. This may come as a shock. It's The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. I know, it's a super controversial opinion. I was not a big Breath of the Wild fan. I made a video outlining the reasons I didn't enjoy it, so check that out for a more detailed explanation. But let's get into the story. This is probably one of the biggest problems I had with Breath of the Wild. In my opinion, there was virtually no story. Okay, of course, yes, there was a story, but it felt like the story had already happened and Link wasn't actively contributing to it. Throughout the game, I had to go looking for memories just to see a crumb of story. And honestly, I didn't find many of them because it just felt a bit silly. I shouldn't have to actively look for a story in a game. There should be some sort of natural progression. Speaking of a natural progression, the memories could be found out of order, which also just adds to the confusion. I don't see why they couldn't just show them in order, no matter where you found it. It's just a little too open-ended in this aspect for me. I honestly think this game has one of the worst stories in the entire franchise. Breath of the Wild's characters don't really stick out to me as much as the other Zelda games. I think even the main characters, Link and Zelda, are pretty vanilla as well. I know Link is known for not speaking, but somehow he feels like he has the personality of wet cardboard in this game. The champions are the main set of characters that stick out and are the most memorable. That is of course by design. I vividly remember everyone thirsting over the hot fish Prince Sidon, but that's besides the point. The regular characters in this game don't really stick out to me. They have nothing interesting going on. I don't get excited to see them or even care what they're up to. Dungeons. Oh boy, this is another thing I was really disappointed with. The Divine Beasts served as dungeons in this game. You can also say that the shrines served as mini dungeons, but honestly, I didn't really feel that way, so I'm just going to ignore them for now. In each Divine Beast, you must unlock the 5 terminals to fight the final boss and reclaim the Divine Beast, which will ultimately help you with the final boss fight. I actually think the way the Divine Beasts function is really cool. You can manipulate the animal to rearrange the room or get around certain obstacles. However, the look of these dungeons are all pretty much the same. There's barely any theming. Not to mention the final bosses, which also, well, you guessed it, they all look the same. Repetition is a major problem in this game, and it's extremely apparent when it comes to dungeons and even the final boss. This game steers away from traditional items for the most part. There are no hookshots or boomerangs. Instead, you pick up different types of weapons you find in the world, which sounds amazing on its own, but the thing is you cannot keep these items forever as they break after a set number of uses. This breakable weapon feature is insanely controversial amongst Zelda fans, and I bet you can guess where I stand on the matter. I am not a fan of breakable weapons. The only weapon that doesn't break is the Master Sword, and even that comes with its own set of restrictions. The Master Sword, the most powerful sword in all of the lands, has a cooldown period. Really, Nintendo? I just wanted one weapon I could rely on. While I'm not the game's biggest fan, I appreciate Breath of the Wild for attempting something different and breaking away from the Zelda formula that dominated the last 2 decades. It brings a unique vibe to the series, even though it didn't resonate with me personally. Number 10. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. This game acts as a sequel to the previous game, Breath of the Wild. Honestly, I feel really weird saying that because I was extremely confused throughout the entire game. It's a sequel, but it also isn't at the same time. As this game is still less than a year old, I won't spoil it, but it seems like some people remember Link and others are like, who dis? Certain parts of the story just didn't add up. It was extremely weak and yet again featured memories which, can we not do this anymore, Nintendo? I'm begging. I do plan on making a separate video on it, so let's save my full opinion on it for the future. Even though most of the characters are exactly the same, they definitely stand out a lot more in this game. I love Tulin, he's so cute, and Purah, yeah, if you've been on Twitter, then you know exactly how most people feel about her. I still feel the same way as I did about Breath of the Wild. Outside the main cast of characters, I really don't care about anyone else. They're just there. In my opinion, the dungeons were a major improvement from Breath of the Wild. The first and most notable improvement was through theming. The water temple looked like a water temple, and the fire temple looked like a fire temple. However, when it came to dungeon gameplay, they all functioned in the same way yet again. Unlock the 5 terminals to get to the final boss, but at least the final bosses were unique in this game, so that's cool, and another improvement over defeating Ganon for the 4th time in a row. The temples were yet again open-ended, and you could really complete them in any way you wanted. You also get to play alongside the champions throughout the entire dungeon and utilize their abilities, which you get to keep even when the temple is complete. Ah yes, the return of breakable weapons. Again, I'm not a fan of this feature, but Fuse kind of made up for this. By fusing your weapons with other materials, it increased strength and durability. You could also make some really fancy looking weapons if you use the right materials. You can also make some really, truly interesting looking weapons as well. The other powers, Ascend, Recall, and Ultra Hand, also added to the game in a unique way. My personal favorite was Ascend. I love checking to see what was above me at any given time. My least favorite was definitely Ultra Hand. I was not a fan of building stuff, and the rotation controls were a bit wonky. Also, most shrines require the use of Ultra Hand in some way, which I don't know how I feel about that honestly. Overall, I like Tears of the Kingdom a bit more than Breath of the Wild. It fixed some things while also doubling down on some aspects I personally wasn't a fan of. In my opinion, it did feel a bit more like a Zelda game compared to its predecessor, and I'm interested to see if the next Zelda game will stick to this formula. Number 9. The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap. The story is extremely simple. This game features the Picori or Minish, which are a race we have never seen again. The Picori are a teeny tiny microscopic race that Link must find to complete his quest to reforge the blade destroyed by the main villain Vati. On his way to find the Picori, Link meets Eslo, a sage that was turned into a green hat because of Vati. Eslo allows Link to switch back and forth from his regular size all the way down to the size of a Picori, which is the main gimmick of the game. As far as characters go, I feel like Eslo is often forgotten when the topic of Link's best companion comes up. Eslo is an extremely fun partner to join Link on his journey. He has a little spice, a little pizzazz, that some of the other companions don't have. Fine, Navi. As for the regular characters, there are some interesting ones in Hyrule. The dungeons in this game are pretty standard Zelda dungeons. I have nothing bad to say about them. Most feature the need to shrink down to complete certain puzzles and progress. My favorite example of this is shrinking down to climb up and inside an Armos to activate it. I think this is insanely clever, and even featuring the same mechanic in a final boss fight was really fun. The puzzles weren't too difficult. It was almost always very obvious to tell when shrinking down was necessary, because there would be a spot to shrink or an obvious hole in the wall. Alright, let's get this out of the way first. Kinstones. They are a big part of the game. I don't really like how random it is, and also how useless some of the rewards are. Like, great, I fuse a kinstone with some random person, and then it randomly unlocks something in the overworld, and then I travel all the way to that part of the overworld, just for it to be some sort of enemy, rupees, or even, get this, another kinstone. It's a lot of tedious work in my opinion. Other than that, you get your typical Zelda items like a sword, bow and arrow, boomerang, bombs, and ocarina. I really do like the vibes this game gives off due to art style and music. If you like collecting things, then this game is definitely for you. It's a very nice, but mid-game. Number 8. The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. I actually think this game has one of the more interesting stories in the franchise. I don't know what the creators were smoking when they were thinking about the plot for this game, but I want some of what they're having. The game begins with Link making his way through the ocean in a storm and his boat being destroyed when struck by lightning. Link washes ashore on Koholint Island, and when he wakes up, his journey begins to wake the sleeping windfish. At the end, once you wake the windfish, you find out that this whole game was actually a dream? What? Also, by waking the sleeping windfish, Koholint Island disappears. Forever. So, I mean, that's kinda sad. The reason the island disappearing is even remotely sad is because of characters like Marin. Marin is the one that actually saved Link when he washed ashore. She's extremely kind and always looks out for Link. She even has the voice of an angel and teaches us Ballad of the Windfish, which helps to awaken sleeping characters. This game also features a bunch of random cameos from Mario characters, such as Chain Chomps, a Yoshi doll, and even Princess Peach, who is apparently helping to catfish a random man in town. Again, the dungeons are pretty standard. The puzzles for most of the dungeons are really fun and or challenging in my opinion. Eagle's Tower genuinely stumped me a couple times. It had me walking back and forth between rooms, hitting switches, making me wonder what I'm doing wrong, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think it's good in this case. Completing that temple was very rewarding, and I really liked the final boss as well. I got to throw hands with an eagle. I mean, that's pretty cool, right? Most final bosses aren't hard in this game, and just serve as a fun little treat at the end of a dungeon. Most of the items in this game are the standard Zelda items. The only really unique item is the magic powder, which felt kind of useless for the most part. You use it to light fires and defeat certain enemies, but yeah, that's really all I have to say for items. I truly love the way this game makes me feel. The music is also really catchy, especially the music from Animal Village. I'm ashamed to admit how many times this song has been stuck in my head. Like, come on, just listen to it. Overall, it's a really good game. Number 7, Oracle of Seasons. This is the only Oracle game on this list because I recently finished it and haven't completed Oracle of Ages yet. The story begins with Link being transported to the land of Holodrum. Din decides to save Link, but she is ultimately captured by the main villain Onyx. Onyx then sinks the Temple of Seasons and throws off the weather pattern in Holodrum. From here, Link must find the 8 essences of nature and destroy Onyx. I don't really care too much for the story, but the characters and overall adventure really makes this game for me. I absolutely adore the characters in this game. They're so fun and memorable. I especially love Subrosians. Look at these guys. Look at them dance. Most of the interesting and crazy characters you meet live in Subrosia. From getting mugged by 2 randos and going on a date with the most popular girl in town, there's always something going on down there. I cannot stress how much I love Subrosia and the characters that live there. I feel like I've said this a million times, but yet again, the dungeons are standard. They follow the typical Zelda order of finding keys, unlocking doors, defeating mini-bosses, getting an item, using the item to get the boss key, and defeating the boss. I don't think this game focuses on puzzles, but instead focuses on action and combat. This is incredibly apparent in its dungeons, and probably why I died a lot in this game. The main gimmick of this game is changing seasons using, well, the Rod of Seasons. Going from winter to spring to summer or fall changes the area completely. It can be a little tedious to do sometimes, because changing the seasons can alter something you didn't want to change a couple screens over, meaning you have to walk all the way back to figure out what the proper season should be in order to progress. Over time, which season you need becomes a little bit more apparent, but there's still some wiggle room for error. Overall, I really like this game. I don't think I can accurately put into words what it is about this game that I like so much, although I do think Subrosia is what really makes this game for me. Number 6, The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. This game serves as a sequel/remake of A Link to the Past. On his journey of returning a sword, Link witnesses a priest's daughter being turned into a painting by the main villain Yuga. Link attempts to challenge Yuga, only to be knocked unconscious. Link wakes up back at his house with someone named Ravio, who gives him a bracelet and tells him to visit Zelda. After visiting Zelda and receiving the Pendant of Courage, Link makes his way to the Eastern Palace, where he meets Yuga yet again for another battle. During this battle, Link gets turned into a painting and realizes that the bracelet Ravio gave him allows him to merge in and out of walls. Throughout the game, Link travels back and forth between Hyrule and Lorule, Lorule being the alternate dark version of Hyrule. Link collects items to find the Master Sword, yada yada. It's a lot, but if you really pay attention and play the game, it genuinely does have a nice story that I cannot get into as this video would be way too long. I really like the characters in both Hyrule and Lorule. You also find out that within both worlds there are character counterparts. For example, Zelda's Lorule equivalent is Hilda, the Princess of Lorule. There's even a counterpart for Link, which, spoiler alert, it's Ravio. Yeah, the man that set up shop in your house, he's your Lorule equivalent. Crazy. The dungeon order is what really makes this game unique. This game came out 4 years before Breath of the Wild, yet it already has some semblance of player choice. You can choose to do some dungeons in any order you want, while still having you complete certain ones before you can progress to the next set. You also do not get items from dungeons. You see, in this game you have to buy your items from Ravio. Yeah, he's in your house, making you pay for the items. Crazy. You can buy whatever items you want, but if you die, then the items you bought will be lost and you'll have to buy them again. Eventually, you're able to buy the items permanently for a steeper price. I really like this game. I think the lore and main gimmick work really well together. The game also perfectly mixes linearity and player choice. I would love to see this style of game in the future. Number 5. The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Oh wow, Link has a family in this game. The story begins with Link living on Outset Island with his grandmother and little sister Aryll. One day, while using his sister's telescope, he spots a girl who falls from a bird's claw into a nearby forest. Link rescues the girl and leads her back to safety, when all of a sudden that same bird from before snatches Aryll. I guess the bird thinks all blonde girls look alike, huh? Here begins Link's quest to save his sister. This game contains one of the best versions of Zelda for sure. Spoiler alert, I mean, this game is over 20 years old, but Tetra is Zelda. Yup, that little sassy pirate lady with a whole lot of spunk is the Princess Zelda. Although once she makes the switch from Tetra to Zelda, she loses all her character and melanin, but that's tea for another day. Another character that is always snubbed in the discussion for Best Companion is the best boat, the King of Red Lions himself, or so he says. He also has a lot of sass, and now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like a lot of the characters in this game have a bit of an edge. The King of Red Lions also has a secret identity. He is none other than King Daphne no Hansen Hyrule. I really hope I said that correctly. AKA, the King of Hyrule. Yup, that Hyrule. Last thing I'll say for characters in this game is that without a doubt, this game contains one of the best versions of Ganondorf. He was kinda spitting throughout the game, I'm not gonna lie. He definitely had some good points about being fed up about the repeated death of his people. It felt like his motives were actually justified. He wasn't causing trouble just to cause trouble. He wanted actual revenge. This feels like the most real and human Ganondorf has ever been portrayed in the entire franchise. The dungeons in this game are extremely easy. I never really got too lost or was too confused about what to do next. In fact, one of the dungeons I heard the most about was the Wind Temple. I remember hearing about how people found it so difficult and annoying, so naturally I was scared to play through it myself. However, once I actually started playing, I was like, this is what y'all were complaining about? Really? It also has Makar. Who can hate Makar? He's so cute! Sailing is a big portion of the game. So much so that sailing from island to island becomes tedious, especially in the original Wind Waker on the GameCube. In the Wii U version, they actually had to add a new item called the Swift Sail. The Swift Sail cuts your travel time in half. Actually, I don't know if it cuts it in half, but you definitely go way faster. This added sail is a lifesaver. It truly makes the sailing portion of the game more bearable. Overall, this game was really fun and had a ton of heartwarming moments. Number 4. The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. The game begins with Link living in Ordon Village. Link spends his time herding goats, hanging out with village children, and his childhood friend Ilia. One day, when Link and his friends, Ilia and Colin, are having a chat, Bokoblin storm through the gate to challenge them. Link is knocked unconscious, while Colin and Ilia are kidnapped. Here begins Link's quest to save his friends. This introduction sequence takes forever to complete, and it feels like it takes forever to get to the first dungeon. But from here on out, the game really begins to pick up. When you first set out to look for your friends, you are pulled into a world covered by twilight. After a brief meeting with Princess Zelda, Link finds out that the man behind it all is the self-proclaimed ruler of Twilight, Zant. So, remember when I previously mentioned the debate for Best Companion? Yeah, this game definitely has the best companion. Midna is such a fun character. She's a bit of a tsundere, but eventually you can tell that she really does care about Link. Not to mention, she looks like this at the end of the game. So, I can definitely see why people like her. Her character arc in history makes it extremely hard not to love her. She was a companion with her own set of goals and actively contributed to the story to get what she wanted. She's one of the characters that makes this such a memorable game. Moving on to the main villain, for most of the game, Zant was portrayed as a serious and intimidating villain throughout the story, only for him to fully lose it during Link's battle with him. And when I say lose it, I mean lose it. A lot of people feel like this jump from serious to crazy was done in a slightly weird and off-putting way, and I kind of have to agree. After this fight, I just couldn't take him seriously. Something about him running around like a chicken with his head cut off just gave me the ick. I truly believe this game has some of the best dungeons. They're so different and unique and also feature some of the coolest boss battles. Some of the dungeons that stick out to me are Snow Peak Ruins and Arbiter's Grounds. Snow Peak Ruins doesn't even feel like an actual dungeon. It literally takes place in a mansion on a snowy mountain. I'm personally not a fan of ice levels due to ice physics, but this one is undeniably good. Arbiter's Grounds is another notable dungeon as it takes place in a prison used to hold Hyrule's criminals awaiting death, trial, or exile. The final boss is also incredibly memorable. You fight this huge ancient skeleton beast, and you use the spinner to jump from wall to wall, avoiding fireballs, and it just feels straight out of an action movie. Twilight Princess also features a couple items that were essentially useless after you used them in the dungeon you found it in. The spinner, Dominion Rod, and Ball and Chain are all the perfect examples of this. The spinner is one of the best items as it's super fun to play around with, but after Arbiter's Grounds, you virtually never use it again. This game also features the double claw shot, which is one of my favorite items in the entire Zelda series. I really like the vibes this game gives off. The art is really unique as they seem to go for a more semi-realistic style compared to other Zelda games. Overall, it's a game I think everyone can agree is extremely good. Here we go, the final 3. This next game might be kind of controversial, but coming in at number 3 is The Legend of Zelda: Skyward Sword. Yet another game I made a video on. Feel free to check it out for my complete opinion. I'm just gonna come out and say it, Skyward Sword has the best story out of all the Zelda games. When playing the game, you actually feel included in the story. The game starts off with Link being a student at the Knight Academy. At this point, you've known Zelda for a while and are extremely close with one another. Literally. There's a real relationship there. By the time Zelda is taken away, you actually feel a strong urge to save her because you can clearly see the bond between her and Link. Link and Zelda actually have a personality in this game. Even taking into account that Link doesn't speak, he still feels very animated through facial expressions and body language. Girahim is the main villain in this game and definitely the standout character. I would even go as far as saying that to this day, Girahim is the best antagonist in the series. Yes, I'm even putting him over Ganondorf. I always look forward to whatever comes out of his mouth. Oh, no, not that. I meant his words. Now, I always have to bring up companions, and sadly, I think Fi is a contender for one of the worst. I know. I personally like Fi, but compared to the likes of Midna or the King of Red Lions, yeah, she's towards the bottom of the list. She kind of feels a bit cold and robotic, and that is completely by design. She's meant to be robotic and slowly transition to becoming more and more human-like. This transition is felt at the end of the game when Fi is locked away in the Master Sword forever. Skyward Sword also has some of the best dungeons. The ones I always talk about are the Ancient Cistern, Lanayru's mining facility, and the Sand Ship. The Ancient Cistern is probably my favorite dungeon. I love the story and the meaning behind it. The temple follows the spider's thread written by Akutagawa. The temple functions as both heaven and hell. The top represents heaven. It's serene, light, and golden, and even features Buddha in the center, while the dark, murky, purple bottom of the temple, crawling with cursed bokoblins, represents hell. If you haven't played this game, I highly recommend playing it for this temple alone. This game also features some unique items, one of the most notable being the whip. I loved swinging across gaps. It made me feel like I was Tarzan or something. One item that wasn't as fun to use was the beetle. Especially early in the game, it's so slow and hard to navigate. I felt like I was going insane every time I had to make a semi-sharp turn. Not to mention it would run out of power if you fly it for too long. I love almost every aspect of this game so much. I love even the goofy art style and terrible motion controls. It's also the first Zelda game I played with no previous knowledge of, so it has a special place in my heart. Number 2, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. The story is pretty basic, but still has nice story progression. Link and his fairy companion Navi set out to destroy the evil Ganondorf who has been wreaking havoc on Hyrule. You know, the typical plot you think of for a Zelda game. I feel like I can't talk about Ocarina of Time characters without bringing up the elephant in the room, Navi. She's quite literally known for being annoying. She always interrupts you by saying, "Hey, listen!" and then will tell you something obvious she sees like 10 feet away from you. Yeah. Thanks, Navi. Another character I have to bring up is Sheik. Throughout the game, Sheik is some rando that shows up and drops little knowledge bombs and then dips. They never stick around for too long and they never reveal too much about themselves. It's not until the end of the game where you find out that it was actually Princess Zelda in a disguise. What? Yeah, I remember being very shocked and very confused as a kid. I absolutely adore the dungeons in this game. One of the dungeons I personally love is the Spirit Temple. The dungeon itself is really fun and very well themed. Having to complete the dungeon as both child and adult Link is a really cool concept, as they both have their different strengths and weaknesses. I also think the lead up to the temple is very memorable. I loved hiding from the Gerudo women and freeing the craftsmen. Furthermore, this is a bit of a cop-out, but I feel like I have to mention Ganon's castle. It has rooms that pertain to some of the previous dungeons, and forces you to use the item you obtained in them. Also, the final story beats we get in here, playing alongside Zelda, and fighting Ganondorf and Ganon is absolutely goated. This game has the basic Zelda items, a hookshot, bow, bombs, yada yada. I think what makes the items in this game different really has to do with the time travel ability. You see, certain items are only able to be used by Child Link, and some are only able to be used by Adult Link. For example, only Child Link can use the Boomerang, Slingshot, and the Deku Shield, while Adult Link cannot. Overall, this game is said to be one of the best games of all time for a reason. It really is a good game and helped to push gaming forward. Truly an icon. If you took a quick look at my channel, then this shouldn't come as a surprise. The number one game on this list is none other than The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. I have a 10-minute video on my channel detailing why I love this game. Nobody watched it, so please check it out if you have the time, because I go way deeper into the game than I will in this video. Majora's Mask is said to have taken place directly after Ocarina of Time. The game opens with Link walking his horse in the woods. Suddenly, the Skull Kid appears and knocks Link off his horse, thus rendering him unconscious. While Link is out cold, the Skull Kid steals his ocarina. After Link comes to and catches up to him, the Skull Kid uses magic to transform Link into a Deku Scrub. On Link's way out, the Happy Mask salesman asks Link to get his stolen mask back. The thing is, Link only has 3 days to complete this task, or else the moon will crash into the earth. This is quite a dark and depressing story if I'm being honest. The characters are super important when talking about Majora's Mask. The side quests and characters you meet absolutely makes this game for me. I don't want to get into a specific story, as they're all super long and complex, but each character really makes you feel for them. In some way, as their impending death approaches, you see them go through different stages of grief, all the way from sadness or anger, to denial, and even acceptance. The side characters are what drives the player's motivation to save the world. There are only 4 dungeons in the entire game. This can leave a lot to be desired. I wish there were more, but you get what you get and you don't get upset. I really like the dungeons in this game, my personal favorite being Stone Tower Temple. The main gimmick for this temple is inversion. You can flip the temple by hitting a switch, thus forcing you to think about the dungeon and its puzzles in 2 different ways. Its final boss, however, is just okay. Some of the other dungeons had better bosses, like Woodfall Temple's Odalwa and Snowhead Temple's Goat. The Great Bay Temple's Gyorg can choke though. I hate that fight. As this is a direct continuation from Ocarina of Time, Link has all of the same weapons, with the addition of masks. Each mask Link collects will help him on his journey to reclaim Majora's Mask. I love the bunny hood because not only does it make Link look super cute, it also allows you to run faster. I also enjoyed the Bremen mask because, well, it's silly. It makes animals march behind you, and I just love the song and how cute it is. Overall, I think this is an insanely valid first spot choice. It's super unique in terms of story and gameplay mechanics, and I would love to see another deep dark Zelda story in the future. So, what do you think? Do you agree or disagree with my list? I know I'll have a bunch of people disagreeing, just based on both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom being ranked so low. Let me know how you feel, and feel free to drop your own ranking in the comments. It's been a while since I made a video and it feels good to be back. My name is Andy, and I hope to see you in the next video.